against this offense. We'll see what they look like when they play
that's the
other teams.
Yeah.
But I will say I've been to the last 5 camps, and this is clearly, head and shoulders, the defense is better than any of the ones I've seen in the last few years. Again, that's comparative, but still, I will say that, and it makes it tough to judge the offense a little bit too, because this defense is pretty good, but they're way ahead of the offense at this point too. So we'll see when they play. But I will say that they do appear to have the tendencies of some aggression, and I am intrigued about the defense for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that we're just got to wait and see. And to be honest, I think the preseason, even the exhibition games themselves in recent years have been misleading. I think we've seen some positives where there really weren't. So, yeah, we're honest to God, we're not going to know anything until the real game starts. So we are still 6 weeks away from getting any real sense of what kind of team this is going to be. As much as we like to think that the preseason is sort of an indicator, it really isn't. I mean, maybe if they go out there and just unbelievably horrible, that will sort of give us a warning, but I don't think that's going to happen. And on the flip side, even if they come out and go 3-1, I don't think that's an indication that the Browns have turned a corner and are going to be competitive. We're not going to know anything until the reality begins September 7th.
Right, I agree. For me, I do a much better job of seeing who's not going to do well in the season out of camp than who is, because you can judge guys when they're not doing well. You can go, man, that guy's slow, he's not getting out of his routes, he's not catching the ball, whatever. But because they're comparatively playing against each other, you don't know how good guys can be until they're out there against other teams that are actually trying to beat them. But you can tell the upside. I can look and go, that guy's not going to work out. That guy's not going to work out. But the other, and I'm with you there. So we'll see, man. Hey, no more weekends without some variation of football going forward. So if you're a football guy.
That is true. It's a big turning point in the American sports calendar. That's right. From here on, there's some aspect of football will be available to us from here on till February, really, until Valentine's Day. So that's always, for people who love football, this is a big moment. This is a really sort of Christmas Eve in a way. This is when the fun begins.
And the perfect way to segue that back into the other thing I want to talk about, because I got a little mad because some radio hosts, you can literally hear the smile in their voice yesterday as they've just been dying for the opportunity to not have the few Indians fans that listen guilt them into just changing the focus of everything and shifting to completely football mode and just forgetting the Indians are even playing. And yesterday, a lot of people were like, ooh, giddy, yay, I don't have to talk about baseball anymore. We get that extra 5 minutes back in your show that you spent talking about baseball. But Indians, I talked about it earlier and before you came on. You kind of heard a little bit about what I said. Hey, who knows how many games they win the rest of the way? They're the same team that they were. So, probably 50-50. They've got a few more home games and a better schedule. I think they can finish decently. I don't think they're packing in the tent. If you want to be mad that they didn't go get help, that's one thing to be mad about. But where are you at? I thought trading Asdrubal Masterson was going to happen no matter who you brought in, no matter what you did, because that's a different situation, but they weren't giving you anything. And I would start with Masterson. I was surprised that they got the level of prospect that they did from St. Louis. I like the outfielder that they got, Ramsey. And even yesterday, maybe they don't need necessarily a shortstop, but decent prospect for guys that were giving you nothing and walking away.
I'm right there with you. I cannot imagine a rational argument could be made for anyone that's, first of all, surprised necessarily that they got rid of Masterson or Cabrera, or that anyone really can be justified in being upset about it. My goodness, yeah. I mean, if you want to really look at two guys, and maybe Nick Swisher as well, you have to lump him in there, but really two guys that personify the frustration of the mediocrity of this season, there they are. I mean, that is it. You talk about two guys, three guys, but these two in particular, that could be so much better. Maybe not dramatically better, maybe not superstar better, but should be better than they are, and therefore the Indians should be better than they are. These are the two guys you look at. So, and we talked about Masterson since the end of last year. I think we saw this coming. We really had a feeling all through the off season and even through spring training then when there was that little bit of discussion that he may have been prepared to sign a long-term deal. Are we glad that didn't work out at this point? But
He's
but
not.
even through all of that,
He's not.
It was yeah. Even at that point, it was sort of an outside thing. I think we knew this was coming. I think the circumstances. I think we more visualized this along, like if the Indians were going to trade Masterson, he was going to be having a good year, and the Indians would trade him, be around at this record, and trade him, and be loading up on prospects, and that would signal sort of a fire sale, sort of the end of the season. But no, I don't think any of us expected to see Masterson have a 5.51 ERA and not be able to throw strikes. And Cabrera, I think we're probably less surprised because I think we're much more used to being let down by Cabrera. So Cabrera, I'm less attached to. I think Justin Masterson, I like the kid a lot. I mean, across the board, not just as a player. I've always had the connection with him. We went to the same high school, so I sort of had that way deep background connection with him. And so it was fun to watch him come into his own a little bit and come of age after the Indians got him. So, and he does great stuff off the field. Just a great guy, classy guy, and wish him the best. This is not like, oh, good riddance, we want to get rid of you. We're glad you're gone. You're a disappointment. Wish the kid the best. It's unfortunate that they couldn't. That first of all, that he couldn't have sort of been a more consistent player. Because if you look through his career. And maybe this is going to help somebody out. They can keep this in mind next year. Masterson really has been an every other year kind of player. He really does well in odd numbered years, and he's terrible in even numbered years. And I think we maybe forgot that. If you look at at least his career with the Indians, every other year he's done that. He'll have a really nice promising year where you think he's right on the brink of becoming a 20-game winner, and then he completely falls apart the next year, and then bounces back. And so. Maybe that means next year, wherever he winds up, that he will become that player that we saw last year or in 2012 or 2011, I should say. So, yeah, I mean, Cabrera less so. Cabrera, I'm much happier to see Cabrera go. I think he has really been a disappointment for at least the last 2 years. And it's sort of symbolic that he was the last player remaining from that 2007 playoff run. Ironically, that we don't really associate him with that team, but true enough, he was the last player left, and now he is gone. So we officially closed the book on that last division championship season. Really, though, I think those two trades, and you nailed it too. I think we said earlier that with these two players, Ramsey and Walters, I'd be very surprised if both of them. Maybe either of them are with the team in spring training next year. And they just seem like, where are you going to, particularly Walters. Ramsey, I guess,
I think Ramsey.
Plant him in the outfield. Yeah, but Walters, I just don't, I guess Walters, they could try to shift him into the outfield. I don't know. I don't know where you put him. There's really no place in the infield with Lindor. Obviously next year he's going to be the favorite for the job going into camp, and now Chisenhall has established himself, and you've got Kipnis, and Santana has now established himself at first base. Very difficult to find a spot for him in the infield. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see either of them, or maybe both, shipped off in an off-season trade for something else that it is more of a pressing need. So for now, really what the Indians did is they really helped out the Columbus Clippers on their playoff run. That was sort of the purpose of the trade. So even though these guys are not going to maybe ever help the Indians themselves at the big league level, you got something for nothing. You were going to lose Cabrera and Masterson. We're not going to be playing for the Indians next year. You got spare parts, whatever you got. If it was a coffee table, a lawn chair, whatever it is, get something for nothing, take it, and live to fight another day. So, yeah.
Right.
What people are really upset about, though, and I think you brought this up too, I think people sort of rolled in whatever their opinion was on these trades, as minimal as they were, with what Detroit did and bringing David Price in, and
who
comparison and contrast there. That's where this really becomes, where you get that vitriol and where people start to get upset about it. They look at what Detroit did and what the Indians did not do, and that's what makes them upset.
Oh, I agree, man. And I mean, listen, I'll tell you right now, they're 5 games. Listen, the Indians can still run down the second wild card. I mean, there's enough mediocrity and teams lumped in there, and the Indian schedule benefits them. But I'm going to be honest, with what happened yesterday, not what the Indians didn't do, what everybody else did do, it doesn't matter. Indians, in my opinion, and everybody else are getting toasted when they hit the playoffs because Detroit and Oakland aren't screwing around. I mean, look at the starting rotations that both of those teams can trot out now. And I'll tell you, I mean, Look at Oakland. Verlander becomes like the third or fourth best starter on that, all of a sudden, on that squad, man. I mean, and Oakland,
that's amazing.
Sonny Gray is their fourth starter, and he is killing the league as a young guy, you know? So, I mean, both of those. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to be wrong no matter what, because even if the Indians make the playoffs, you can chalk up a World Series run. And that's just my opinion, because other teams beefed up a lot. I mean, adding David Price to Detroit, that's sick. I mean, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's
coming,
almost
man.
not fair. I mean,
right.
but if there's a silver lining to this cloud for the Indians, that move backs up what we talked about when the season began. Is that Detroit really looks at this? This is their last shot. This is their last best chance, and they are doubling down. They're all in. I mean, this is it. If they don't, and they should win. I mean, hats off to them. That was an amazing trade. I mean, they clinched the division. Let's be honest here. Assuming everybody stays healthy, there is no way Kansas City or the Indians are going to run down the Tigers. Not that there was much of a shot of it anyway, but after what happened here this week with getting Price, forget it. I mean, the division race is over. But really, I mean, this is almost a pre-pass. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, Detroit and Oakland wind up playing in the championship series rather than the division series. I think that's screwed Oakland here the last few years when they've lost to Detroit. So hopefully that'll be your LCS and not your division series. But yeah, I mean, that essentially gives Detroit the division title. It gets them probably through the division series and maybe all the way to the World Series. But basically what it does is it underlines what we thought at the beginning. Detroit's, this is it. This is their last chance. They know it. And they're going all in. Price is not a long-term solution. He is a rental, essentially, and it may work out beautifully. But this is it. If Detroit cannot win the World Series this year with this team, they are not going to do it.
No, and we've seen that. We talked, like you said, all the way back to the spring, and that's like just completely confirmed that they are going for it. You know what I mean? And and hey, but going back to the Indians, I still, like you said, that's the division. I said it. I said the division is a wrap. But with the two wild cards, I mean, listen, last night I'm watching the Indians game when McAllister imploded there. Of course, you know, you guys watched it along with me. I'm going, okay, man, are we looking at another August like a couple of years ago where the team just collapses? But you know what? In the bottom of the inning, they bounced right back. The Indians came back. I watched the Indians play last night, and Shaw, yes, they lost the game. Shaw gave up the jack late, and we've seen how the bullpen is, the edges are frayed because they've been used so much. But that, to me, that team did not fold camp last night when I was really watching to see if they did, and they had the opportunity to do it. I mean, you're down 4-1, and you come back and take the lead. You fall late, but again, like, I think this Indians team is not going to fold. I don't think we're looking at an August like a couple of years ago. And you and I have looked at the schedule. I really do believe looking at the 5 teams in that grouping, they've got every much of a chance to chase down one of those wild cards as the other one. Problem is that's where I think the journey ends no matter what. But still, if you want to give up on this season and think that the Indians did, I disagree. I don't think that at all. If they did, I think you'd have seen more guys traded. Maybe you wanted to, but I think you would have seen maybe David Murphy traded. You would have seen maybe Axford. You know, different. There was other guys with some money attached that have been moderate contributors, not Axford, but Murphy I'm talking about, to this team, where if you see them traded away, then you go, man, they're just selling anything that people will take at this point, you know? And so there's a difference.
It's 2009, yes, exactly. 2010, that type of era.
Do you agree, though? I mean, I think that this team, it's still a good team. That's what people forget. There's a difference between good and good enough. I think it's still a good team, and they did not screw up the core. They didn't give in to the temptation of digging into the farm system to go get a marginal guy like an A.J. Burnett or somebody like that that maybe wins you 2 extra games down the stretch.
Yeah, what's frustrating about this is really what we've seen with the Cavs in the last few months. We're going to tie this in here with LeBron. And we've said this too with the Cavs, that the only way the Cavs were ever going to become a contender again was to land to somehow, whether through the lottery and getting the high draft pick or some sort of miracle free agent deal, which is what turned out to happen. Actually, both of them. Both of them. But the only way you were going to become a contender again was to land one of the top 3-4 players in the league. Period. They weren't going to be able to build a team with these nice kind of players. I mean, the Indians are basically, that's where they are. I mean, you're right. They have built a team that is, I don't know if they're good enough, decent, however you want to describe it, but they have built essentially a 500 team. This is a 500 team in a 500 franchise. It's mediocre. It's good enough. It's entertaining. They're not, and to your point too, we're not going to see a collapse like we did 2 years ago. For no other reason than Terry Francona. I just cannot